Hi everyone, wish you a very happy 2021. I hope you had a blast last night and you brought the new year in, which is you did ring the new year in with great hope and positivity and a lot of enthusiasm. Okay, for me, it was a plain Jane, yet another day. We were home, we called in some food, had it with the family, and made it like a usual day. Went to sleep, got up early. But New Year's are usually pretty cliche as well, as far as even the New Year resolutions are concerned. So a lot of us make New Year resolutions and with a great bang, with a lot of energy, with a lot of new goal setting. And then as the year progresses, it may not be even right in the middle of the year also. Right somewhere in the beginning, after a couple of months, our enthusiasm goes down, our life takes over, or our usual patterns of approaching goals, or our usual way of looking to life, and our decision making, the capability and way it works takes over, and somewhere down the line the resolutions are left behind in some notepad or probably in your head. Even though the intention is there, you're unable to live up to the resolutions you made, even though the things that you want to kind of live up to and change. So resolutions, that's why they say, is meant to be broken. However, this sets the context of my today's conversation, which is understanding the whole brain power, because we are using our brain and our power of the brain to make these resolutions, because rightly so we want to achieve them, and somewhere it is the power of the brain which is not helping us achieve them at some point, and therefore they get left behind. So what is whole brain really? And my thought was, I've been hearing these conversations with a very renowned scientist and biologist, Dr. Bruce Lipton, and he's done some great amount of study in this field, and he has written many books. So as part of understanding, hearing, and somewhat practicing it also, I thought it would be a great idea to take you through the concept of whole brain of none other than a beautiful day like this, which is the first day of the year. So this could be one way of setting a new resolution, of understanding how the resolution you could make it work, than making and breaking, right? So I've got some notes here which I will keep referring, because these are handmade and not from any script, so that I just cover all the points that I really have in mind to be covering this concept. So just to take you through, as part of our schooling and our studies, all of us have studied the brain, of how it is structured biologically in terms of understanding different functions of the brain or different lobes of the brain, because brain is the operating system of the machinery that we are really, and different parts of the brain definitely help us achieve different function of our body. But I'm not going to get into dissecting the brain really, but what is important for us to understand is how the brain is structured as far as the neuroscience is concerned, as well as on a psychological or a psychiatric level. So there are many studies, and this is scientifically proven, that the 10% of our brain is the conscious brain or the conscious mind, and then 90%, actually it's 50 and 40, is the subconscious mind. So 10% only is the conscious mind, and 50% is subconscious, and 40 is the unconscious. So I'll just put it into two buckets, that there is a conscious brain and there is a subconscious brain, and 10% of that is conscious, and all the chatter around mindful living, mindful eating, mindful thinking, mindful breathing is only happening through that 10% conscious mind, which means it's that much harder, because 90% is subconscious, which I'll come to what does it mean. So all the mindful eating, thinking, breathing that you need to do, you have only 10% power of the brain to contribute to your mindful thinking, because 90% is how the mind is operating, with the subconscious mind is operating in a pre-programmed manner. So the subconscious mind comprises of all the recordings that it has seen today, yesterday, day before, this lifetime, and many other lifetimes. So basically, subconscious mind is all about our programming, our patterns, our behavior. It's the habitual brain, and it is the conditioning or the preconditioning that the brain comes with. And if you are a Hindu and you believe in Hindu philosophy, then we are not talking about a life as far as brain is concerned, life is concerned. We're talking about many lives. So our subconscious brain is a collective body of many lives that may have lived in the past, and of course this life as well. So which makes you take this understanding further, that 90% of the times we as individuals are operating from our pre-recorded programming and patterns. There is a pattern and there's a habit in which we operate or react or do things, and that is what we are doing 90%. And it's only 10% that we're using to do active decisions which are in the moment right now, using all our orifices of what holds important right now. So this is very important to understand, because all our decisions and reactions and actions are coming from our 90% of the pre-recording fashion. I'll give you some, so of course there's scientific part to it, which means that 10% of the brain has all the neurons that we need in that space, and the 90% of the brain is other connecting tissue and cells which do the functional or the integrated function that we need to do to reach out to these neurons. So this is just a scientific approach to this. This study is available. If this particular topic interests you, please go and Google it. You will get all the understanding and research papers around 10% and the 90%. So just to tap into a little bit more into your subconscious way of operating, to give you an example why I'm saying that 90% of our brain works with is a subconscious brain which works as habitual patterns, because we've learned it as part of a 0 to 7 years, which is our most formative years. Our brain is like a sponge. It's kind of downloading everything that it's getting from the father, the mother, the environment, with chacha, chachi, uncle, auntie. It's just like a sponge. It's kind of retaining and keeping there everything. And post our formative years, or the 7 years of our life, is when we start making habits and patterns. So we go to school and we learn ABCD up till many years, to then knowing it like in and out. We don't have to learn it ever again. We learn how to brush our teeth, and then there comes a time when we are literally brushing our teeth without using any 10% of our brain into that, right? We are just brushing our teeth, and while brushing, it's like a program. We get up in the morning, we brush our teeth. While brushing our teeth, we are doing 30 other thinking processes, like somebody's thinking of their job list, somebody's thinking of what to cook in meals, somebody's thinking of what their meeting needs to cover during the day. So we are just following the program of brushing our teeth. Similarly, when you're driving a car, initially, of course, when you're learning how to drive a car, you have all your conscious mind present and all your orifices present to learn how to drive a car. But as it becomes a habit of over years of having driven a car, you reach a level when you're literally driving the car without concentrating on driving the car. It's happening as an auto program. You're using the clutch, you're braking, you're accelerating, you're changing the gear. While driving the car, you know the destination where you need to reach, the route to get to that destination. While all of that, you're also making conversations with the co-passenger, you're also listening to music, and we bloody well also checking our phone sometimes. So it is such a program which is on autopilot mode, literally without our even knowing, because we haven't given any we haven't really given any thought to it, and it's happening as an auto fashion while we're doing other things. And we're using that little conscious mind to think, acha, abhi left lena hai ki right lena hai, what's the address, maybe the Google map. So conscious mind is also being used, but the driving of the car as a pattern is just happening as a habit, which is the power of subconscious mind, and which is how we make our decisions in a regular pattern of reaction. So there is a certain situation that occurs, or there is a certain response we have, and we follow that when we give it to people. So if somebody talks to me in a certain manner, I have a pre-recorded way of responding to that, with my ego or with my words or whatever. It's a pre-recorded message. And if there's a certain situation that I get into, whether it's stress or extra work or whatever, I will have a pre-recorded way of tackling that as well. So why this is important to understand is this is how we live our life. While we want to get into the zone of mindful living, thinking, eating, breathing, but sadly we are victims of our subconscious mind, of our own habits and patterns, and 90% of the time we are only focusing and doing those things. which makes you understand scientifically that you're only using certain parts of the neuron pathways. So these are communications between the mind and the conscious mind, right? So if we are working with patterns and habits, naturally we are using very limited patterns and neuro pathways of our brain, which makes us understand that there is a lot more that we can tap into by understanding the process and being more aware of how our brain really functions and where we are doing pre-recorded programming functioning and where we're using our active mind, to then tap into our brain and use it more holistically and seeing the power of your whole brain. That's the conversation for today, really. So naturally, when you're using only few neurons, you have that much more capacity left to tap into. Okay, so and once you're able to understand how this works, what are the two processes? So one process I'm going to talk about is at the awareness level, and the second is actually in the physical level of how you use the brain, create a brain gym kind of exercise and tap into your whole brain, so that we have both the tools available to us. So when we're talking about awareness, right? So it is also mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita when Krishna actually tells Arjun about that there is a window of opportunity that exists. So window of opportunity means just between when you react into a certain situation, or you react, or you're taking a decision, or you're talking, there's a little window of opportunity between the pre-recorded fashion of how you're going to react and the actual decision you can make. So there is that window of opportunity when you can decide. The decision making is always resting in our hands to bypass, reject, or replace that old pattern that is coming as a natural response. So when you talk about decision making, what is literally a decision making? It's a power of either saying a no or a yes, which means consciously you're either choosing to say no, and consciously if you say no to something, you are saying yes to something. Now, for example, we all are habitual to touch our phone again and again and again. I'm talking from experience because I do it all the time. Okay, now we may be sitting in a meeting or in a conference, and suddenly you want to reach out to your phone and you want to check the ping that happened on WhatsApp or on email, or for that matter, what's going on Instagram. Now, and it's not the right thing to do because you need to concentrate on the conference, on the meeting. You need to pay attention to who you're giving time to. But we still go and reach out to our phone, maybe for a split second and back, but that is out of pattern, just out of habit of reaching out to your phone every 10 minutes. But that's the time, if you're able to make that decision and use that tiny window of opportunity that we all have to choose a no over that yes, you've made a conscious decision. That is how you've used the 10% of your brain power of making that conscious decision and not worked with the 90% of the subconscious habitual pattern. Okay, now it's very tough, but if the moment it comes to your awareness, you can start practicing that. Why I'm saying tough? Because I just went and touched upon the preconditioning, which is not of this life. This preconditioning is of many, many lives, if we believe in Hinduism, right? So if your conditioning is of many lives, how easy and auto quick response is it for you to respond in that manner? But always remember that fraction of a second, that tiny little opportunity that exists, and also that the capability and the power of making that decision to use that window opportunity is available to us today, tomorrow, day after, multiple number of times, and even every single minute, because we are making decisions every minute, right? So that opportunity exists with us every minute. So it's tough. You may not be able to execute that decision making power using your conscious mind for everything, but the more you start doing it, the more new neural paths you're able to create in your mind, which is the reason why you're able to tap into whole brain or your other parts of the brain, because you're not using the habitual patterns. Are you guys with me? Do you want to give me a thumbs up? Are you listening? Are you understanding? Am I making sense to you guys? If I am, share some hearts, share some thumbs up, so that I know that the conversation is going in some direction, and you may have some questions that you may want to ask as well. Or is it too high for you to understand. So subconscious mind, just to add on and to give you a little bit more idea, is like how you pre-program computers used to, old computers used to come with a booting system, right? That the moment you open the program, it starts booting like a sequence of pattern of things which are programmed, and there is this little cross button there which you are able to, if you're able to click, you will save yourself of getting that sequenced program thing that comes up, or else you have to figure out and go through that sequence, right? That's exactly how our mind works, our subconscious mind works, in that sequential pre-recorded way, till you're able to tap into it and cross that button by making an active conscious decision. So that's part number one of bringing it to your awareness, that the decision power, the decision capability always is with you, in your hands, every single minute. So the more you execute it, the more new patterns you create in your neural pathways into your brain, and the more stronger it gets to make and get rewired. So for example, how these patterns are formed, if I'm doing it repeatedly, ABC from my first standard up till the first 2-3 classes, I know ABC by heart. Then I start getting into comprehension, and then I do it repeatedly, so that becomes a habit, right? These are the basic things which we learn by habit. And similarly, our reactions also we learn by habit. So those patterns are decided and those neuropaths are formed. To form the new ones also, we'll have to do them repeatedly so many times over, so that new wiring gets created. So which is why there is scientific evidence of why a new habit or a new thing that you want to practice or learn needs to be done for over 21 days to 90 days, because you do it once, the two new neuropaths are connected in the brain as an activity, and if you do it repeatedly, वो wiring पक्की हो जाती है, वो wiring strong हो जाती है, वो wiring real हो जाती है, because वो टूटती नहीं है. आपने एक दो बार किया, पैटर्न में वो जुड़ी थी neuropaths, but उसके बाद हमने वो repeat नहीं किया, we didn't kind of follow it up, it didn't become a पक्का जोड़, so somewhere it breaks. Unlike what we do repeatedly, like brushing our teeth or driving a car, bathing in a certain pattern. So all of those are the patterns. Similarly, we need to figure out consciously how we work and creating new patterns. So that is a very important thing. In fact, what I've got here, which I want to talk about, is also again coming back to Gita. Krishna says very, very clearly that the path to yoga, or the path to awakening. Now, yoga in this case does not mean Hatha yoga or your Vinasya flow yoga that we do, but path to yoga here means the path to the union with the divine, or the path to self-realization, and therefore the path to self-awakening is to conscious decision making. So only if you're able to make conscious decisions will you be able to understand this whole path of yoga and awakening. So they are also correlated, right? Because whatever actions we are doing as the last mile, right? Whatever last mile action that we do, which is habitual, pattern, auto response, etc., is coming through first a word, and before the word, the thought. So it's also a pattern of thinking in a certain way, and therefore reacting with words in a certain way, and lastly the actions in a certain way. So these are all different phases, right? The action obviously is the last mile, and that's the most gross meaning gross, as in you can see, feel, and slightly subtler are the words, but the subtlest most is the thought. So at the thought level also we're working in a certain pattern कि हमें ऐसे सोचने की आदत है, हम बैठते हैं खाली तो हमारा ऐसा तेज non-stop thought parade chalta hai, and then some of the thoughts come into our words and then comes into action. So even getting aware of how this pattern is working and where it's a habitual or a pre-programmed one, if we are able to break it with a conscious decision making of no over a yes or yes over a no, we are able to move into the conscious 10% mindful thinking, living and behaving. Okay, now that was the one aspect of it in terms of awareness. So obviously, if we are more aware of this whole concept, we are able to utilize maximum capacity of our brain. And once we are doing it, clearly, as I said, we are taking more conscious decisions. conscious decisions are always that much more calmer, are less reactive and more thought through. Okay, so that's the awareness bit of it. Now comes the second part of the conversation, which is actually in the how to achieve this in a physical format, right? So we all know this is, again, we've studied back in our school. I'll just refresh your memory that there are two parts to our brain. Okay, there is a left hemisphere and there's a right hemisphere, and most of us have also studied that our left hemisphere of the brain is responsible for our logical, analytical, and a radical thinking, which means a lot of us, natural response, a natural way of thinking is clinical. If not this, then that. We'll make a presentation, we like to make scribble notes, etc., etc. So that's a logical, active left hemisphere brain thinking. And for some, the right hemisphere helps us think more creatively, more out of the box, use more emotional patterns of thinking. And we need both. If we were only clinical and only rational in our approach, we will not have our heart, and we will not have empathy, we will not have emotions where we are able to take kinder, more loving decisions, right? Or more emotional decisions. So at all point we are using both, but typically you will have a dominant brain type, right? And all personalities are different. So somebody may have a left dominant brain, which is more logical thinking dominant brain, and some people may have a more right dominant brain, which is more creative and more emotional, which means that whichever part of the brain is more dominant, your decision making process comes from that thinking approach first, and then you use a little bit less of the other hemisphere. And how this works also is at a part of our functional is that all the movements that we do with our right hand, right body parts is actually governed by the left side of the brain. And when I do using my left hand or left leg, I am using the right hemisphere is responsible, right? So to live a more holistic thinking life and to use your brain more holistically, there are whole brain postures and there are whole brain exercises so that you can use both parts of the brain and therefore take more holistic decisions and have a more holistic thinking. And that's how you live a more holistic, peaceful, calmer, balanced life, by taking balanced decisions, by using your brain in a balanced fashion, right? So typically what happens, scientifically speaking, while the left is responsible for the right movement, however, when I move my right hand over to the left, it gets picked up by the right brain too. Similarly, if I'm moving my left arm on over to my right side, however the right was responsible for the left, it is also now being picked up by the left because it's moved on to the right side. Okay, also this also applies for crossing the legs, right? So once that happens, once the crossover positions happen with legs and with arms or with any exercise, both the parts of the brain, which is your left and the right, are getting activated. So naturally, when both are getting activated, they come in sync, they come in more balance, they come in sync because now when I'm doing these crossover activities, naturally my brain needs to work in cohesion, in coherence, in sync, so that I don't bang my hands or whatever. So it already naturally is coming in sync. So this is the process when you come into hemisync, wherein both your hemispheres are syncing together and coming in balance. And this is how you're able to take more balanced decisions. So coming to make it more practical, there could be times when you're feeling a lot of anxiety, you're feeling confused and there's a bit of a brain fog of if you have to make a decision on something, or there could be a situation where you're feeling stuck in, where you don't know how to proceed forward. Is it the right way of thinking? Are you thinking logically or emotionally? That's when you need to use this technique. You could use it every day as well to naturally progress into a holistic whole brain functioning. But especially in time of distress, what you can do immediately is sit with a crossover position, which means bring your right over left or left over right, whichever feels comfortable. Similarly, cross your legs and feet over. You don't need to cross full legs, but only the 2 feet can be one left over right or right over left, whatever feels comfortable. And that's the position. If you just sit with your hands crossed for 3 to 4 minutes, thinking about that situation in this crossover position, after 3 to 4 minutes, you will see a change of the activity in your thought process and come to a better conclusion or a response or a decision on the ability to crack that particular situation or thought process that you may be stuck in. But executing these exercises every day helps at a larger scale for your brain to work more holistically, more in sync and more in balance, and therefore take holistic decisions, and decisions which are much more thought through, which are more balanced, which are most calm, which are less reactive, and more appealing to your own self. Okay, so yeah, I spoke about Hemi Sync, and again, by doing this repeatedly, you still create new neural paths in your brain and rewire your brain to think in a more holistic way. So in a way, when I spoke about starting with that, scientifically speaking, 10% of our brain is conscious, but that can also be stated as a myth, because you can actually tap into a brain in a more holistic fashion, and actually you can tap into 100% of using your brain by moving it away from the usual patterns that it's used to. So when we talk about brain gym, or we talk about exercises which can heavy sync or get you in more syncing stage, as in synchronicity stage, so you can do many exercises which are to do with cross. So for example, crossing over. So while warming up, we do a lot of exercise where we are tapping into our knee with the opposite hand, we're tapping into our knee with our elbows, then we are doing other asanas where we're crossing our legs. So anything that helps you cross over, whether it's in the yoga form or in the aerobics form or the Zumba form, is something that you should make a pattern of 5-6 such exercises which you do on daily basis, and therefore work your brain to work in more coherence and in more synchronicity, and eventually see yourself being in more balance, and it really works. And for the immediate quick fix, just 3 to 4 minutes sitting with your hands crossed, maybe if you can get it here as a more comfortable position, and sitting with your legs crossed, which is just to the extent of your ankles, shutting your eye for 3 to 4 minutes, thinking of the situation that is troubling you, where you're unable to make a decision. You will see, you will come back with a clearer mind, with less fog, to be able to take your decision. So these are the activities. If you can just Google something called brain gym or whole brain posture, you will be able to get a series of exercises that you can do either in the yoga form or in the other cross training form, to be included into your daily exercise regime, in order to tap into your brain, which is beyond just the usual patterns, and move towards using more of your conscious brain, and therefore living a more mindful, more holistic life. I think that's where I'll end, and if you have any questions, please share. I'll be happy to answer. And if this topic interested you, or you liked what this whole concept was all about, do leave comments, and maybe I can do a couple of more sessions with some specialists as well, and we can go a little deeper. Of course, it's a very vast topic, and just one conversation is not going to be enough. But if it clicks somewhere and you find it meaningful, we can surely take it to the next level and address a couple of more questions. And I would be in the subsequent post putting in some more brain gym or whole brain postures and exercises, so that you can include them in your daily regime, right? So I'll leave it at that. Hope you guys have a great year ahead and a more holistic living, and keep tuning in for more such ideas, and all the best. Bye-bye.